Hello everyone, Ruby Ravel here. I hope that you are all doing well and enjoying the advent of this festive season with its lowering temperatures and cleansing frosts. I thought I would make a departure from my normal videos about all of the changeability of the transits and aspects, and instead focus on something that I don't often get to talk about, which is the rising sign. We all tend to talk about the big three when we're discussing astrology or meeting someone for the first time. We say, what's your sun, what's your moon, what's your rising sign? And yet I feel there's often a lot of misunderstanding about what the rising sign is and how that energy actually expresses itself in our lives. So I thought I would take some time just to focus on this now and talk about this very important part of our natal charts, or indeed any kind of astrological chart. So I just want to start with a little desultory outline as to how the rising sign fits in with the rest of the wholeness of our chart. So when you're looking at someone's horoscope, you are seeing this full wheel of the zodiac with all of its different distributions of the planets that represents them as a total person. The fact that we all have the 12 signs in our charts, that we all have all of the different planets and asteroids and other nodal configurations distributed around our chart, reveals to us that we are all, in our own ways, complex, multi-leveled people. We are all microcosms unto ourselves and unto other people as well. And you'll notice when you're looking at a chart that it's divided into 12 houses, like a cake that has been sliced into 12 different portions. The reason we slice a cake into 12 different portions is because unless we have a very big mouth, we cannot eat an entire cake in one mouthful. And I think it's the same when we are meeting another person or when we are psychologically assessing ourselves. We have so many different sides to us that they cannot all be expressed or given equal articulation simultaneously. Therefore, those energies have to be distributed and expressed in different areas of our lives. A more accurate analogy for the distribution of the houses in the horoscope is that each one of them represents a different room in the house of the self. In every house we have numerous rooms, all of which are there to fulfill a different function. The kitchen is for cooking and eating, the living room is for socializing and relaxing, the bedroom is for sleeping or making love in, the bathroom is for cleaning or for getting rid of biological waste, the garden is for growing things and for creating a space of beauty and leisure. And it's the same with the houses. All of them represent different modes of articulation and different areas of our life where we have a variety of experiences. And just as we don't necessarily invite everyone into every single room of our houses when we invite them over as a guest, it's the same with which parts of ourselves we do and do not show in our horoscope. You know, if you're inviting someone over to the house for the first time, you might show them the living room and you might show them the kitchen. Unless they're a potential romantic partner, you're unlikely to invite them to the bedroom or to share the bathroom with them. That's something that you need to have cultivated more intimacy with someone before you are willing to invite them into those spaces with all of their suggestive requirements. But before you even get into the house, you need to have a front door. You need to have a facade to the building. And this is the function that the rising sign expresses. The rising sign is the facade of the building. It is the outer surface. It is the way that you present yourself to the world. But just as the exterior of the house can be very different from the characteristics of what is expressed within it, the rising sign can also be in varying degrees of harmony or disharmony with the more interior aspects of someone's personality. So let's carry on with the architectural analogy and do some examples about the discrepancy that can sometimes occur between what we present to the world with our rising sign and what other parts of us may be revealing once you get to know us on a more intimate interior level. Let's say someone has Capricorn rising, but Sun in Aquarius and Uranus ruling the 4th house. So as a building, that might look like a house that is Gothic and Victorian. It's an old building made of local sandstone. It stood the test of time. It has an old-fashioned, monolithic, confident, safe and respectable exterior to it. And you think, okay, well, if I go in this building as well, probably the rest of it is also going to be kind of old-fashioned and rustic and full of period pieces, antiques and Victoriana. You open that front door and instead you find that the house has been decorated in a futuristic, hyper-modernist sci-fi manner. So it's like you've stepped through this Gothic facade into something that on the inside looks more like a TARDIS. You could have it another way as well. Let's say someone has Libra rising, but Sun in Scorpio and Pluto ruling the 4th house. This person might have a house that is very beautiful and aesthetic and perfectly and exquisitely designed and decorated on the outside, looking like a house you could go in and just lounge and relax and enjoy yourself. And you get inside there and you encounter Pluto and you find that everything looks like a sex torture dungeon. You could also reverse that as well. So someone could have Scorpio rising, and it's a house that looks almost like a military fortress. It's got barbed wire around the exterior, gun turrets and, gargoyles and skeletons decorating the garden, but the person has the Sun in Cancer and Moon in the 4th house, and you go inside and everything's actually all cuddly and soft. So the menacing, violent, sadistic exterior is different from the soft, fluffy interior, and it's the same in terms of how we express our own energies astrologically. So just to divert a moment and explain what the rising sign actually is. So if you're looking at a horoscope, you'll notice that there's this line that goes straight through the middle. This represents the horizon, and the rising sign represents the point of the eastern horizon at which the sun rises up from the underworld into the dawn of day. So it's the point at which actual solar dawn begins, in contrast to the other side of the horoscope, which is the western horizon, behind which the sun begins to descend at solar dusk. So this begs the question of, why do we need a rising sign at all? Well, why does a house need an exterior facade and a doorway? Well, it would be awfully drafty if we didn't have a wall covering the front of the house or a doorway. If we didn't, it means that people could come in and go out whenever they pleased. We would have no sense of having a private life. We would have no sense of feeling secure and protected. We would be too permeable, too impressionable to the outside world. Nothing that was precious within us could be kept safe. And I think this also relates to the fact that our rising sign, if we are able to express it confidently and in the way in which we desire to, helps us feel like we can interact with and relate to the world more without the deep personal stuff within us always being hurt, wounded, damaged or infected. I often think of the rising sign as being like a mask or like a suit of armour. It's the thing that we put on before we leave the house knowing we'll have to interact the world. But not everyone is going to feel confident or empowered wearing the same suit of armour. In fact, what makes one person feel powerful and capable of interacting with the world may make actually another person feel exposed, weak, and vulnerable. So the rising sign expresses the style in which we feel confident and empowered interacting with the world, but also able to protect ourselves. You have to remember that the rising sign in the first house is analogous to the energies of Aries. So it's the part of us that feels like it can be a warrior, that it has the might and the power and the puissance and the fighting ability to take on the world. And when we don't feel able to express the energies of our rising sign effectively, that's often when we are more likely to be withdrawn and reclusive and to pull away from taking any chances or risks or challenges in the world. So let me do a few more examples about the interaction between the rising sign and other parts in the chart, particularly the sun. Let's say there's someone who has the sun in Cancer, but Aries rising. Sun in Cancer, as you know, is one of the most sensitive and emotional placements of the zodiac. Cancerian people are very sensitive people. They feel very deeply. They tend to have very strong emotional attachments. They are very sensitive about how people react to them and respond to them and the energies that are within their immediate field, and therefore can very easily take things very personally. They are known, not without good reason, as being the crybabies of the zodiac, because their feelings are so dominant in their thinking and their perception and their reaction and response to the universe at all times, which can make them very empathic and compassionate and maternal people, but also ones who don't always find it easy to divide their emotional experience of things versus the objective reality of how things actually are. Now, if someone's had Sun in Cancer in the 4th house, but Aries rising, they don't want the world to see that side of them. They don't want the people looking at them on the street to say, hey, look at that person over there, aren't they a shy, sensitive, introverted crybaby? That's exactly the response they don't want. They want people to see the Aries rising. They want people to see someone who is commanding and authoritative and fiery and passionate and ferocious. Someone who knows how to take the initiative on things, how to be a leader, how to be forceful, and how to push their way through any obstacles that meet their path. They want to give the impression of this person you don't want to fight with, because they will fight you to death if they cross them, but also someone you can trust to take a position of power and to know what they're doing. So there's the discrepancy between the energy that is put out and how you want people to perceive you versus how other parts of you may feel, which can be completely different to the way in which you are perceived. And the thing is, we want people to see our rising sign because we feel empowered. When we do, we feel that our mask is effective, that we are efficiently putting out the energies we want to put out. So if you have that Aries rising and someone says, you're a strong, bluff, bullish figure who gets things done and is frightened of no one, you're going to think, yes, I'm living my rising, I'm getting across the impression I want to get across, I'm safe. However, if you're walking down the street feeling like you're this confident, powerful warrior, and someone says to you, oh, well, you're a very shy, sensitive, introverted person, aren't you? You might feel like you've left the back door open. You might feel like a thief has snuck in and come through all your defenses and seen more of you than you intended to show. So whatever is on the angles represents something that either we want to show or which, for various reasons, we are fated and destined to show. They are parts of us we can't hide, whilst there are other parts that are easier for us to conceal, which we can choose whether we share them with someone or not. Once the Aries rising person gets to know someone and trusts them and feels like it can have a more intimate relationship with them, then it might show that other person how sensitive it is. It might share with them their vulnerabilities and their softness and their caring maternal nature, but that's not something that they're going to give freely to someone until they've kind of got past the Aries gate. So there's a kind of gatekeeping security role going on with the rising sign. Let's reverse this just so we can get an example of how someone can have the same energies in their chart, but how they can be expressed in very different areas of their life, depending where you meet them and the nature of your relationship with that person. Let's say we have someone now with Cancer rising, but with the Sun in Aries in the 10th house. So you might meet the Cancer rising person on the street, and you find that they are very sweet, very soft, very caring, very affectionate, someone who seems to be very concerned with your emotional life. You know, if you met a Cancer rising person whilst you happen to be working on the checkout, they might be the person who says, "Oh, hello dear, how are you doing? How's your day been? How are you feeling?" You know, someone who, rather than just being another mindless customer, actually seems to take the time of day to get to know your emotional life, to express some kind of actual personal care and consideration towards you. They put out this kind of nurturing, maternal energy that makes you feel like they really care about what's going on underneath, and may also be surprisingly forthcoming in sharing their own emotions with you, even though they've just met. They may be someone who wears their heart on their sleeve. And you think, oh, you know, what a soft, emotional, sensitive and kind person. What a lovely person to be around, how generous and kind and giving they are. You meet that person in the workplace where the Sun in Aries in the 10th is contained, and you find that instead this person is a CEO of a company who takes no quarter from anyone. They are very forceful, they are very aggressive, they can sometimes be rude and obnoxious when they want to get their way. They are someone who takes no for an answer. They are a bit of a workplace dictator who is fiery and passionate and always ready for a quarrel if anyone disagrees with them. Very competitive and always seeking to get to the top. So again, you have the same energies, but the area in life in which you are meeting them with that person varies depending on where they are placed in someone's chart. However, as with any astrological placement, there are certain complicating factors that can significantly change the way in which the energy of the rising sign is expressed. You can have the rising sign, yes, but if the ruler of the rising sign is placed in a very different house and sign, or if there is a very different planet placed in the first house, then that energy might not express itself in the same straightforward way. So the sign that is on the cusp of the rising, the planet that rules that sign, is known as the chart ruler. For instance, with Aries rising, Aries is ruled by Mars, so that would make Mars the ruler of the overall chart. If Taurus was rising, Venus would be the ruler of chart. If Aquarius was rising, Saturn and Uranus would be the ruler of the chart, and so on and so forth. But if the energies placed within the first house or the planetary ruler are very different, then that gives more complexity to the energies that we put out into the world. I'll give you an example. Let's say someone has Leo rising. This is someone who's going to want to come across as being confident, bright and full of sunshine, someone who's colourful and charismatic, and who, rather than just being, you know, one of those ordinary people who blends with someone else, always stands out as someone who's truly idiosyncratic, someone who's truly an individual, someone who has no problem or issues with expressing their most authentic and personal self. There's a warmth, there's a brightness to this person that just makes them stand out luminously from the rest of the crowd. They might wear big, bright, colourful clothing. They might seem like someone who's generally cheerful and optimistic and really engaging and lively when you meet them. Someone who, when they come in the room, just lights up the whole place. They're a kind of a natural performer, a natural entertainer. They know how to get things moving and how to make everyone laugh and hopefully draw out the best, most personal sides of themselves. You know, there's no need to break the ice with them. As soon as they approach you, all the glaciers melt, and suddenly what was frosty and indifferent before it is now warm and full of a nice interpersonal exchange. However, if that person also had Saturn on the rising, it might feel like they want to put out that energy, and yet Saturn is acting as a he's minimizing that energy, he's toning it down, he's putting an obstacle between that solar energy. He's taking that bright light and he's taking the dimmer switch and he's turning it down. That person might feel, even though they've got Leo rising, because of Saturn then, they might be a bit more subdued, a bit more self-contained, a bit more private. They might still possess some of that warmth and that humour, but they might not give it as easily. It feels a bit more guarded and insecure and uncertain of itself. It might feel like there's more walls around this person. So don't just take the rising sign for a given, because sometimes you can meet someone with a certain rising and think, well, I'm not getting that feeling at all. But if there's a compromising planet in the first house, or the ruler is in a very different sign, then the types of energies you might get coming across from you could be a bit different. Now, if someone had Leo rising and the sun also in the first house, then their solar, fun-loving, joyful, exuberant qualities might just end up being magnified tenfold. It's interesting when a planet is placed in the sign as the rising in the first house, because it means then that the exterior we're putting across is the same as a key part of ourselves. We're showing a key part of ourselves to the world and wearing that part of ourselves on our chests. It's something we feel comfortable and confident sharing and giving away to the world, or which in some ways we may be fated and destined to always have to share, whether we want to or not. But if that Leo rising person had the sun on the other side in the 12th house, which has similar energies to Pisces and Neptune, they might still come across as someone who's colourful and individualistic, who's fun and playful and always up for a laugh and for doing something exciting and different. And yet they might also have this kind of mystical, evasive quality, like there's something they're not quite revealing, like there's something they're hiding, like there's a part of them you just can't quite access that is giving that extroverted energy a bit of a introverted feel to it. It might be the same as well if someone had Leo rising but the sun was placed in Pisces. So they're putting out those Leonine energies, but they're doing them in a more Piscean way. So they might dress like a mystic, wearing all kinds of, fantastical colours, or be someone who seems to have this capacity to shapeshift and become a different person depending on who they're interacting with and what's going on at any given time. That in spite of that exuberant, colourful, apparently straightforward surface, you also get that feeling that there's a lot else going on that's almost ethereal and otherworldly and not easy to understand or really getting a feeling for, someone who can appear in whatever way another person chooses to project upon them. Now, once you get more deeply involved in the mechanics and philosophy of astrology, you come to realise that no aspect exists in isolation without simultaneously also casting a shadow, casting an opposite polarity against which it can define itself. And it's the same with the rising sign. The rising sign does not exist in a vacuum in the chart, but is always part of that general axis of the horizon, with the rising sign on one side and the descending sign on the other. You could say that this dichotomy is the difference between the external self and sometimes the interior self, the self that we show to the world versus our more intimate self that we only show with those who know us well. But also, if the rising is the energy that we're putting out into the world, then the descendant and the 7th house represents the energy that we then want to receive from the world, that we want to receive from others to balance us out. If we are too focused on the energies of our rising, as with anything else in our chart, we can then become lopsided. some people can become so needful of the power and the drive and the efficiency and the strength and security that they get from effectively displaying their rising sign to the world, that they almost convince themselves that they are their rising sign and nothing else. You know, and like I said, someone who's got an Aries rising, but a lot of other placements in their chart that are watery and sensitive, may like the firepower that they get from their Aries rising so much that they deny the rest of them they exist. They say to the world, yes, I am powerful and confident and a fighter and a warrior and a go-getter. I'm definitely not sensitive. I'm definitely not emotional. I'm definitely not vulnerable and needy. Please don't look at the rest of my chart. You know, if we have issues with insecurity, then it's almost like we can take the mask that the rising sign represents and feel the need to actually nail it onto our face. We can't remove it. We can't show people what we are like when we take the mask off. And to me, in some ways, the descendant can represent what we are like when that mask is taken off. But the rest of the chart can also represent that as well, who we are behind doors. So in order to make sure that we don't become lopsided and imbalanced and a fanatic or an extremist, which is what happens when we hold on to one part of our chart without expressing the rest of it fairly and equally, we need the sign on the descendant to balance us out. There is a sense sometimes that unless we have someone or something that is offering us the energies of the descendant, that we are only half a person, that we are never completely fulfilled. We need that other energy to be coming to us, either externally or for our own interpersonal expressions, in order to feel like we are balanced and that we're not just tipping the scales completely one way or the other. So we'll stick with the Aries rising example. You know, the Aries rising person who's argumentative and quarrelsome and who's always a victor and a winner is going to most likely disown more Libran qualities, which are known for being more relaxed and leisurely, for harmonizing with people, no matter what. With Libra, it's less important who wins and who's victorious, and more about the fact that everyone's having a good time, that everyone's getting along, and focusing on the commonalities and the shared values and pleasures that you experience with someone, rather than the things that make you different that you might be more inclined to fight about. Libra is tactful and diplomatic and very conscious of the feelings of other people, and therefore, rather than Aries, who says, I am what I am, you get what you get, you know, either like me and praise me, or fight me or fuck off, Libra is more likely to compromise and adjust itself and recalibrate itself according to every different person that it meets. So someone who's identified with the Aries rising may find that in order to balance themselves out, they often attract close partners, whether they be lovers, you know, wives, boyfriends or girlfriends or what have you, or whether they be intimate friends who are very different from their rising sign. You know, they attract partners who are more diplomatic and tactful and reflective and inclined to think about things more deeply before they make a decision. And there can be a complex push and pull between the rising and descending. We can often be very attracted to people who represent our descending signs, and yet we may also be inclined to look down on them as well. The descending still represents a part of us, and for people who have a stellium of planets in the 7th and the descending, like myself, are often more aware of that other side of themselves. But some people may convince themselves that that descending sign, that other half, has nothing to do with them. It's something that belongs to other people. So the big bluff Aries rising martial warrior hero may simultaneously want a partner who's more feminine and Venusian and tactful and a mediator and more inclined to leisure and aesthetic activities as opposed to constant competitions, they may be attracted to that, but they also might be inclined to look down on that as well, as to say, I could never be like that. I could never be such a weak, indecisive, effeminate person. That's nothing like me at all. So it can sometimes be the shadow against which we define ourselves. And yet I feel often to maintain real astrological balance, it's usually healthier if we accept that that part of us still does exist on some degree, even if we would rather sublet it and project it onto someone else. Again, let's invert this just so we can have an example of how those two energies can be present in someone's life, but they might be experienced in a very different way. Let's say there's someone with Libra rising, but then Aries on the descendant. So this is someone who, when you meet them, comes across as someone who's very beautiful, who has a strong sense of aesthetics and style, who dresses themselves in what is clearly a very composed and calculated manner. Someone who's really taken care over their appearance so that other people can find them beautiful. And there's a very significant thing that happens psychologically and interpersonally when we experience someone as beautiful. If we experience someone as beautiful, it's a sensual pleasure for us. It gives us joy. If we find someone attractive, we are more likely to be softer to them, to be considerate to them, to want to give them more privileges than we would grant to the other person. So there's a real advantage to presenting a Libran face to the world, but also if Libra wants to come across as someone who is kind, who has good social skills, who has good awareness of both themselves and others, who is aware of the complexity of other people's lives, this is someone who really knows how to interact with people, who knows how to go into a room and have a conversation with almost anyone and find a way of getting along with them, even if they might come from very different fields of life, even if they might come from very different backgrounds. They are always good at finding that common denominator, that common center, that means that they can get along and just kind of neutrally and pleasantly take a moment to enjoy each other's shared humanity, regardless of whatever their other values might be. If you want to present that face to the world, you don't want to come across as a disagreeable, quarrelsome, competitive person. You don't want to come across as someone who's, edgy and restless and always bruising for the next fight and competition. You want to show that more delicate, genteel, cultivated, cultured and refined face to the world. In fact, you may be ashamed of any part of you that is more selfish and aggressive and ego-driven. And yet, because Aries is on the descending sign, more martial, decisive, go-get-'em, ego-driven people may be exactly the kind of people that you end up being attracted to, precisely because you do struggle to make a decision, or you do struggle to take the lead and do things just for yourself. You need friends and partners who can do that for you, who can be the ones who give you the extra push, who can be the ones who encourage you to stand up for yourself, or who do it for you. So the whole point is that the people who are represented by our seventh and our descending are occupying energies that we don't want to occupy for whatever reason, so that we don't get hoisted by our own petard. One final thing before I finish this video is to talk about the rising sign in your progress chart as well. So whilst we have our natal horoscope, which is a picture of exactly what the planets and stars and signs and houses were doing at the precise moment of our birth, in progress charts, that changes over time. Just as our values and our appearance and how we present ourselves to the world changes over time, and how we can go through different eras and epochs, what the rising sign is in our progress chart can depict those changes, those gradual changes and approaches to life over time. And sometimes those changes can be so enormous that we can see more of ourselves in our progress chart than our natal chart. I'll give you a few examples of how someone might experience those shifts before I finish the video. Really, it's a subject that's so complicated, it deserves its own video. So if any of you would like me to make a video about progress charts and progressions in general, please leave a comment, and if I get enough, perhaps I will do you the good deed of meeting those astrological desires and curiosities. Let's again stick with Aries rising. I don't know why I'm giving Aries rising so much so much center stage, other than the fact that Aries rising likes to have center stage and likes to have its own way and likes to have lots of attention. I don't always get along that well with Aries rising people. If any of you are watching this video, pretend I didn't say that, or start a fight with me, which is the more Aries rising thing to do, unless your Mars happens to be in a more Venusian sign like Taurus or Libra. Anyway, so the Aries rising sign, let's say someone's born with Aries rising at exactly 0 degrees. It's just there on the horizon, 0 degrees. At some point in their late teens, maybe by the time they're 20, that rising sign will have shifted into Taurus. So for the beginning period of that life, someone may have express those original characteristics. They're a very martial person. They're someone who wanted to meet life face on, confront it, be provocative, be challenging, and just really put themselves out there extrovertedly to the world. They're someone who wanted to really achieve, who really wanted to prove to the world just how strong and capable they are, of how creative and amazing that you can be, how they could take a particular decision or vision or ambition and manifest it in the world. And they may have been really someone who really pushed themselves out there, who was very athletic and energetic and a real go-getter who just seemed to be there to embrace life, but also who had no difficulty starting fights or disagreeing with anyone who seemed to get in the way of those very headstrong ambitions. But around the time that rising gradually progresses into Taurus, like I said, in their late teens, in their early 20s, it can vary from person to person. Just check your progress chart. It's very easy to check on astro.com. They might find that gradually they experience a changing of temperament. They're tired of always starting a new project. They're tired of always putting out so much energy. They're tired of always having to reinvent themselves and to always feel like they're engaged in a competition with the world, that in every situation they always have to prove themselves and prove their worth. In fact, in that original period, they may have proved so much that they begin to feel they can relax a bit more. They don't have to fight so much. They don't have to struggle so much. They don't always have to be finding a new way of beginning. They've accomplished enough that they can begin to relax and to rest on their laurels. They can say, I don't have to prove myself anymore. I have achieved. I've built something more solid for themselves. And they may begin to find that they want to interact with life more slowly. Instead of, being this competitive, career-driven person who is, trying to rise to the top of the heap, they may find, well, actually, I want a bit more of a balanced life now. Venus has become their chart ruler. They might say to themselves, I want to settle down. I want to have a house. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I don't want to keep racing after new things and new projects and always being pulled that way and the other by whatever my desires happen to be at the time. I want life to be a bit more sane. I want to feel like there's some more solid ground under my feet. Instead of always chasing after new things, I want to take some time just to really nurture and cultivate and maintain and preserve the things I already have in my life. So from being this fiery, passionate go-getter, they may instead become someone who seems a bit more calm, a bit more relaxed, a bit more solid, who's got their feet on the ground, who's a bit more diplomatic and considerate in getting on with other people, who's happy to let people have their own values and to let bygones and be bygones. We could take this further and imagine someone who has Taurus rising and the point at which that rising progresses into Gemini. So this person started where the other person left off. They may have started their life as someone who, even as a child, seemed surprisingly serious and mature. They never seemed to be one of these children who was aggressive or who had tantrums or, who was unreasonable. They could be stubborn at times and very headstrong in terms of sticking to the things that they wanted and didn't want, but they may still have been someone who approach life almost in a more adult manner. They were a child who liked their routines, who liked their rituals, and who liked to get along with people, and who may have started working at an earlier age. They may have been someone who accomplished and made themselves at a very early age, someone who, by the time they were in their mid-teens was already married and had children and a house and a mortgage of their own and their own self-started career. Around the time that their rising progresses into Gemini, they may start to get itchy feet. They feel like up till now they've lived their life safely, they've done the mature thing, they've done all of the normal things that normal ordinary people do, they've done everything that has been expected of them by society at large, and yet they feel what once satisfied them isn't working anymore. They no longer feel content, putting in a solid 9 to 5 and then coming home to spend some quality time with the wife and kids, watching things on TV. They feel like, well, I built all of this, but there's so much more to life than just the things that I've been taught and just the things that I've accepted and just the things that I've been built. Yes, I love my house. Yes, I love my family and kids, but I want more. I want to experience. I want to experiment. I want to go out there into the world and try things that I've never tried before and learn things that I've never learned before. And they may find that what once felt like a comfortable Taurian container for their welfare and stability in this world is no longer doing it for them. Instead of feeling like a safe container, it feels like a cage. And they now feel that mercurial restless and want to break all those bars down and go out into the world and explore something new. If they've had a relatively sedentary job, they may want something that's more active, that involves communication or working with different kinds of information, or which involves more travel and perhaps is more mercurial and intellectual than whatever more practical jobs they've been doing beforehand. They may even find that their nice traditional wife, house and kids don't do it for them anymore and need to radically approach the way they change relationships. With Sagittarius now on the descendant, they may find that they get bored of their nice spouse and fall in love with a beautiful person from another country and completely relocate there, excited by all of the new things and novelties that they encounter in that changed environment. Anyway, those are some very typical cliched examples. If you have any questions about your own progressions, do let me know in the comments. In general, if you have any more queries or any more things that you want to share about your own experience of your rising sign, or advice about how you could express it perhaps more effectively and keep it in balance with the rest of your chart, please comment or please reach out to me more personally. You can email me at thestarsunraveled@outlook.com if you want a reading. Readings are very flexible. I mostly conduct them over WhatsApp, and there is no fixed price system. I just ask people to make a donation of their own choosing. As I understand, everyone is coming from very different financial backgrounds. You can follow me on Instagram at Astrology in Underwear, and you can also, if you wish, support me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Stars Unraveled.